And that's why when I also wanted to see one of my only friends who lives nearby, she said no.
No, okay.
Oh, wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammie and Michelle.
Sammie, so this question has come up in regards to taking a sabbatical or taking time off work, which is how do I prepare for it? How do I plan my first weeks or months? And I do have some ideas around it, but I was like, oh, is it really that big of a deal? And then I thought about the argument we had recently.
It was a one-sided argument where I was being attacked by Michelle.
Okay, this is not the time to be pointing fingers.
It's true. I'm planning on going on a sabbatical. I'm planning on taking time off. And I'm doing this because I want to focus on building community, being with my family, really just fostering the relationships that I have. And so my mom decided that she's going to go help our cousin by watching his 6 children while him and his wife go on their anniversary vacation.
Which, okay, yes, that's very, very nice. It was a little bit surprising when I heard this because our mom did not give us any indication that these conversations were going around. But, I was like, to each his own. I'm happy that that's something that she's looking forward to and plans to do.
Just really doesn't seem like the vibe you had when I told you that I'd be joining. So I was talking to mom, like, you know what, I'm gonna join you. I'm gonna come, So I come in the house. I'm like zippity doo-dah. Michelle's laying on the couch. And I told her, I think I'm probably gonna go with our mom to Michigan to go help watch our cousins.
Okay, yes. I was a little bit surprised.
A little bit surprised is the wrong way to describe this. She was literally like, you're an idiot.
Yes, I regret my word choice.
So hateful.
I
don't
was
use
shocked.
those kind of words in this household.
It was wrong, and I have reflected, and I am making changes in my life. However, when I sat and thought about it, I realized that part of the reason I was upset, and I think at some point more adequately had this conversation with Sammie, was I was like, you don't really understand. Like, when it comes to planning something like taking time off work, especially in our case where we also want to plan moving with it, I was like, hello, there's a lot going on. There's a lot we need to do to prepare in the next few months. And I will say, I also did a little journaling and reflecting, and I was like, I can't control how you have your experience. And so I do want to let you know, I'm blessed. I've come to terms with it. I'm actually very happy for Sammie. I'm excited for her. I think you and our mom are going to have a really great time. It's going to be super fun to be in Michigan. But I did realize I do have strong feelings. I don't necessarily think a sabbatical is like you quit your job and you just are happy-go-lucky. You could be, but...
This is what I think happened, is Michelle actually has experience with taking a sabbatical. And I only have experience with going to a job that takes up my entire day and then takes up the rest of my day after that. So for me, I'm thinking if I'm not working, I'm going to be having all the time in the world to do everything that I want to do. So let me just add things to the calendar. And Michelle made me realize through her hostile and angry words that I need to be really careful about what I'm doing and really focus on planning those first few weeks, that first month for the sabbatical, so that I don't get overwhelmed and I'm able to finish all the things that I want to finish as well.
Yes, Sammie. And that's actually why hearing this question from other people around sabbaticals, seeing your own experience, we thought it'd be really great to talk about designing month 1 of your sabbatical. Both from my past experience and as Sammie is looking towards hers, we do have some tips that we think will be really helpful to share if you're planning to take a sabbatical, which we just define as any period of time off work.
Let's get into it.
But first, as you know, Sammie, I have been going through so many flight problems. I swear, half the flights that I've taken this year have gotten canceled. All this complaining paid off, though, because I spoke to my friend Alicia, and she recommended this company called AirHelp. And after using AirHelp, I had to reach out to them because I was so excited about what they're doing and how they can help our Build a Wealthy Spirit community.
How can they help?
The thing that AirHelp does is you give them your information, your flight information, where you're going, cancellations, and they will actually go and talk to the airlines and work for you to see if they can get you some sort of compensation. And so I filled out the form with AirHelp. I gave them my information, and they go and they fight the good fight for you. And it's great because you don't pay anything unless they actually get you your compensation back. You pay $24.99 if they actually are able to get you something from the airlines. So I was like, done. And if you're running into something similar, check out our partner link in the show notes and bookmark it, because trust me, when your flight gets delayed, you are not going to want to have to deal with it afterwards.
Back to our topic for today, planning the first month of your sabbatical. We read an awesome piece called Planning a Sabbatical? Smart Tips for the Journey by Kate Ashford in the BBC. And in this article, she recommended a 2-year preparation period before taking your sabbatical. And I'm not even going to lie, at first I thought, oh my goodness, that is way too long. But then I realized I actually have been financially preparing for this sabbatical for the past 5 years, even though I had no idea that I was even going to take a sabbatical until like June.
I've been preparing for a sabbatical my whole life. Day one, started working. It was like, you know what, let me put a little bit of, let me prepare myself for a little time off.
I need to save some for a large chunk of time off.
Yeah, Sammie, it's funny because I feel the same way. Like, I really felt like I was thrown into my sabbatical in some ways. You know, I lost my job, but at the last month of my job, I actually was on a plan. I was like working hard to try to save my role, but I also knew that something could happen. And so even though during my work hours, I was really focused on my work, I did start to do a little administrative cleaning to make sure that if I did lose my job, I would have the opportunity to stay out of work and feel okay about it. And those are similar tips I want to share today.
I love that reframe, Michelle. Instead of a plan to get fired, you were like, I'm planning for a sabbatical.
I'm on a PIP for myself.
And truthfully, while you're working, there's a lot of things that you can be thinking about before leaving, aside from just saving money.
Oh yeah, Sammie. Especially if you're in the US and things like your health insurance is tied to your work.
If you're in the US, health insurance is like number one on this list. If you're not in the US, you're probably thinking these people care a weirdly large amount about health insurance for two reasonably young, seemingly healthy people. Health insurance is not cheap in the United States of America. And a lot of jobs, if you leave on the 1st, you will get health insurance for that entire month. Versus if you leave on the 28th or the 30th, your health insurance will end at the end of the month. So sometimes if you're plotting your leaving, it's nice to plot it so that you leave on the first few days of the month.
Exactly, Sammie. And like you said, it's not cheap to get your own health insurance depending where in the United States that you are. And also, a lot of times the health insurance that you get through your work is really good. Or you're already attached to certain providers or dentists or eye doctors. When I knew that I was going to leave my job, I luckily was in San Francisco, despite the fact that I was working in Austin. And I was like, you know what? I want to see all of my doctors. I saw my provider that I liked. I went to the dentist. I got new glasses. I got new contacts. I was like, I don't know what my insurance is going to look like in the future. And I want to make sure that I have taken care of everything. So at least for another year, I don't have to worry about some of the basic stuff.
Yes. And even though things like COBRA, which is the health insurance that you can take after leaving your job, even though that's expensive, sometimes it's worth it to do for a month or two, just because you really don't want to be caught uninsured. In the United States, not being insured can be a huge liability. And so even though it can be a pain in the butt to get an expensive one for a month or two, I'd recommend it so you don't end up in a bad situation.
Yeah, for me, COBRA was way too expensive compared to paying for my own plan. But to your point, Sammie, I wasn't really proactive about looking at my health insurance for when I finished my job. And so I dragged my feet, and I didn't realize that when I signed up for my new health insurance, it started on the 1st of the next month. So all of a sudden, I had this weird gap in time where I technically was uninsured. It was actually okay because my COBRA can be backdated a certain amount of time, but I was pretty stressed out. I was not doing cartwheels in the front yard during that time.
Another good thing to do is get phone numbers and emails for everybody at your work. Your HR's phone number, your 401k provider's number, payroll, all these people that you may have to contact later, make sure you get all their contact information. And also make sure that they know your address so that if you have any delayed paychecks or anything coming in, that's all set up correctly.
Yeah, Sammie. I think a lot of people will be like us. I moved after I left my job. You're likely going to move after you leave your job. That means your address is changing, possibly your state is changing. And it's good to over-communicate that stuff to your human resources department once they know that you're leaving. Key thing, once they know you're leaving. Because there's always something. One last paycheck that needs to get back to you, your W-2 form, and it's just better to take care of those things up front. I will say even, Sammie, do not be embarrassed to have a meeting with your HR person. I call it my earnest neuroticism. I have 50 questions for them. Sometimes I'm asking them questions they've never heard about before. I'm like, when does my health insurance start? When do I get my bonus? Do I get 2 weeks pay? Literally anything that I can think of, I come in with a list and I'm like, let me ask everything because look, once you leave your company, it's a lot harder to get a hold of people.
It's so true. They don't care about you anymore. Just kidding. But it's true. It's much harder than just dialing the extension from your work phone.
Exactly.
You might have specific things that you need to care about. For me, I need to make sure that I get my malpractice face sheet or my malpractice binder so that I have copies of that to have on file. And I also like to make sure that my public service loan forgiveness is updated. It's nice to get that done before you go so that if it's not done on time, you can check and see with HR what's going on a little bit easier.
Exactly, Sammie. And another thing on the administrative front is that if you have a good relationship with your managers or your bosses, anybody above you, your peers, I don't think it hurts to ask early for a referral or a reference and let them know you're going to take a little bit of time off work. My manager, my SVP, my boss's boss, they were all really, really generous with offering me referrals. It was super nice. Like, despite the circumstances, like, they knew I had been working hard. They really understood that I had a good work ethic. And it's nice to know that if I need to, I could still go back and call them if I needed a referral.
Next, there's finances. We talked about saving money a bit in our episode, The Art of the Sabbatical. But one thing that I found is when I was thinking about going on my sabbatical, I'd randomly have these little attacks where I would feel like I didn't have enough money. And then I'd go to my bank account, I'd count up all my money, and then try to reassure myself that I have plenty of money. Unless something crazy happens, I'm totally fine for like years. So I don't need to worry about this.
Sammie, and I would love to normalize that cycle. I think that happens to everybody. Before, during, and after your sabbatical, you have those moments where you're like, shoot, do I have enough money? Is my money going to run out? Have I eaten sushi too many times? And now I have to look for a job tomorrow. So I just want to normalize that feeling. This is something that happens to everybody. And so it's okay to go through that cycle.
One thing I realized, Michelle, is that for me, I really don't like taking money out of my quote unquote emergency fund because that feels like I'm taking my emergency money. And this is something just completely psychological. But I had to rearrange my accounts so that psychologically I felt better. Because at first I started having crazy ideas, like maybe I'll sell my I-bonds and put that into an account to use for rent, or maybe I'll use my 457 account, which I have access to after I leave my job, and use that as my money for the year. But I realized those ideas were silly because in some of those situations, I'm literally paying taxes to get that money when I have tax-free money in my savings account. So I realized I had to relabel my accounts. My I-bonds and my 457 combined are now called my emergency fund. My savings account has been split into little buckets. Depending on your bank, you may actually be able to put these monies into different accounts for free, which is what I'm doing. And I just relabeled that account money for rent, money for spending, money for health insurance. So that way, I don't feel like I'm physically taking out emergency fund money to pay for rent. Completely psychological. All the same money is there as it was before, but it makes me feel better and it just makes me feel like I'm not using money that I might need one day.
I think it's really important to set your money up in a way that makes you feel comfortable, Sammie. Because we did talk about this, and you told me about your plan to take it from your I bonds or take it from other vehicles. And I said to you, I don't understand why you wouldn't just use your savings money, your money that has the least APY, you're not gaining much interest on it. Why would you interrupt those other mediums if you can just take money from your savings? And I knew you had enough money in your savings.
Spoken like a true emotionally detached person.
You know, that is what 2 years out of the workforce does too.
I'm like, you don't understand that money is labeled emergency fund. I can't just take it out.
But I totally get that. And I think part of that, we have a whole episode on financial runway. And I think that part of doing the runway is also seeing, okay, how long will this last me? And also just getting yourself comfortable with that. Like, I think I had to run the numbers a few times. And I had to be like, okay, even if I go crazy, I still could stay out of work for a year. If I'm able to cut some things, I can stay out of work. I have numbers where I'm like, okay, if I'm at a 3-month zone and I need to get a job, like I know where that's going to happen in my savings and investments account too. So take a look at your money. Don't avoid it. Like a lot of side anxiety comes from that. I don't think you necessarily have to do that before your sabbatical. That can be week 1, week 2. But honestly, doing the money counting can definitely help alleviate a lot of your fears, or at least put in perspective what your personal situation looks like.
It gives me a whole new meaning to what Little McScrooge was doing, the duck, when he was like swimming in his money. It's like maybe he had like an anxiety attack and he's like, no, let me just go swim in my money. Okay, whew, everything's fine. Everything is fine.
Yes, we're just like Scrooge McDuck and all of his gold coins. But Sammie, it's funny because you're talking about the psychological. Everything we've talked about right now has been so practical. And there is so many other personal things that I think you should also take care of just to help make the start of your sabbatical a little bit easier.
In the piece we mentioned, Planning a Sabbatical, Smart Tips for the Journey, they specifically talk about not overstructuring your time.
Oh yeah, I loved it. She said, avoid the level of structure it takes to take care of your everyday in your workplace. Don't replicate that in your day-to-day, which I think is such a good piece of advice. I always say you got to deprogram yourself from the 40-hour work week.
And I have to disagree with you, Michelle.
What?
Yes, don't overstructure your time. But if you're someone like me, 0% structuring your time will be like an anxiety attack. And there is no fountain of gold coins big enough to swim in to get rid of that anxiety. So I've found a little balance for myself. I've created a 3-month calendar for the first 3 months of my sabbatical, and also a week-by-week calendar on Google Sheets. And in my week-by-week calendar, I've done like the first few weeks, and I add things that I do want to do, like exercise and make time to lotion and take a shower. Just some of the few things that I'm starting to include in my early days of the sabbatical, but leaving a lot of time for just errands and packing, just because I know I'll be shifting a lot from working full-time to now moving and setting up things like the health insurance. And I just want to leave space to have time to do all those things without filling my time with other stuff.
Sammie, I can understand that. I do think, we mentioned there are a few things that you have to do, and it is good to give yourself time to do them. I once spent 6 hours at the DMV.
Oh gosh, if you live in San Francisco Bay Area, you know that the DMV is it's an absolute nightmare. You can pay somebody in San Francisco to wait in line at the DMV for you because that's how terrible it is.
This was actually in Austin.
Oh.
And I wasn't even on my sabbatical then. It was the day after Christmas, and me and every other person who had moved to Austin had decided to go to the DMV that day. But as someone who's had to go to the San Francisco DMV 4 times, I do agree with that sentiment.
Jeez.
When you move, guys, you got a lot of things to do, and going to the DMV is top of that list.
You can add cancel subscriptions that you are using for work to that list as well.
Good point. And, Sammie, I will push back a little. One thing I think it is also important to make time for yourself. Get some sleep. Rest. Also, give yourself time to relax. Yes, though, I do understand that for some people, my little type A is like my Sammie here. relax, quote unquote, doesn't necessarily happen without a schedule.
Michelle's right. When she verbally attacked me for wanting to see my baby cousins,
It's such charged words.
she was coming from a good place. She knew that I shouldn't try to plan too much. And that's why when I also wanted to see one of my only friends who lives nearby, she said no.
No, okay.
It's true.
Okay,
It's true. She said
you know
no.
what? How about when you actually put your calendar together, you saw that you didn't have any time? I'm getting a lot of hate here, okay? And you know what though? I will let you guys know that I have let go. Sammie can do whatever she wants with her free time. I cannot control how you have your sabbatical, and I will not try to.
So I had to text my friend Sarah. Sarah, I love you. My sister recommended that I not schedule any hangouts until we get closer and we see if we actually have time, because there's going to be a lot of stuff going on with moving. It broke my heart.
Call me crazy that between moving and babysitting 6 children in a different stage, you might not have time to also go travel 2 hours and go visit your friend.
She's right, though. Don't overplan, because realistically, you probably have way less time than you realize that you have.
But I am glad, Sammie, that you have friends that are supporting you and excited for you. One thing I think that is important to talk about is not everybody is a sabbaty like your girls here. And sometimes they don't understand taking time off work. You know, we are, especially in this Western culture of ours, deep in our work and our identity. And you can have conversations that might make you feel like other people don't understand what you're doing. And we just want to prepare you a little bit for that.
Yes. To be clear, you don't have to tell everybody that you're taking a full-on sabbatical or your exact plans. When you're telling your workplace, you might just let them know that you're taking a few months off, and then you'll, eventually start getting into work again. They don't need to know all the details. You might not even know all the details. And you don't have to try to explain yourself to people who also might not understand what you're talking about.
I wholeheartedly agree, Sammie. And the reason I say this is because I had a lot of, not people close to me, honestly, like my family and my close friends were really supportive. But sometimes you do have people who are like tertiary in your life, and it's well-intentioned, but you're like, oh, I'm going to take a little time off work. And then they're like, and then what? And you're like, I don't know. What do you mean, and then what? I'm taking time off work. And be like, well, then do you go back? What job are you looking for next? How can I, maybe help you find the next job? And you're like, no. Like in my case, I was like, I don't want to think about that. I want to literally just wipe my mind of those worries, and then I'll think about it when I need to think about it. And, I have to process these things and figure it out for myself. So it happens.
Yes, and people, they're not always coming from a negative place. They may just be genuinely curious about your next steps. Or maybe they know people that they think could help you find a job, and they're trying to help in that process. They may be just a little bit more deep ingrained in the jobby mindset. But not everybody is going to understand that you're just taking time off of work to not work.
It's so true, Sammie. And, it's interesting because this piece we read had a really interesting perspective. They said you should tell as many people as possible. They said it's a good networking opportunity. People can make connections for you if you're going somewhere. They said Kenya. They're like, hey, maybe you have other friends going to Kenya too. We can connect you guys.
I found this part a little bit pretentious. They said, if you tell your friends that you're going to Kenya, surely you'll have 2 or 3 friends who are in Kenya, or maybe going to Kenya themselves, or have been to Kenya. I'm like, okay, not everybody has 1 million friends who are just like traveling to Kenya all day.
I know, but it is a fair point.
A little out of touch.
It is an interesting example to give. But on one hand, they say, like, the more people you tell, they actually say that the harder it is to not go. They're like, oh, you've told all these people, now you're going to go on this sabbatical. I don't know. I think our identity is so attached to our work that if enough people tell you, what are you doing? Wait, when are you going back to work? Well, how will you support yourself? Literally, people will project their fears onto you. It could cause you to go the other way. So I think read yourself, see how you feel when you're telling people. Maybe tell a few people that are very close to you that you know will be supportive first. And then as you get more comfortable, you can tell other people. I tell everybody now. I could care less. But there was a point in my life where I felt really insecure about it, honestly.
I completely agree, Michelle.
And speaking of insecurity, Sammie, the last thing I want to mention is self-compassion. Both before, during, after your sabbatical, 1, there's no right way to do it. 2, a lot of us, we haven't gotten used to how we want to relax, how we want to structure our days when somebody else isn't structuring for us. It's not going to look perfect the first time around. You're going to get a letter from your car insurance saying, hey, it looks like you moved and you didn't tell us. That's okay, don't freak out. Things will slip through the cracks. But I honestly, I think the one thing that I really, really wish I knew earlier was how to have more self-compassion for myself. I was so hard on myself. I feel like if my day wasn't quote unquote productive, I would feel like I was wasting my time. I was wasting my time off. And it took like probably a few months before I felt comfortable. And so I just think like one of my biggest messages is if you have the time to give yourself a little bit of time off, take some time and have compassion for yourself because it's a different type of life you're living.
Takeaways.
Takeaway number 1. Get things straightened out at work. Figure out your health insurance. Make sure you have everybody's phone number. Make sure you talk to people who might be good references in the future. Work on getting as much set up before you go so that way you don't have to stress out about being in contact with your workplace after you've left.
Exactly, Sammie. And once you get your ducks in a row, start to think about the personal stuff. Are you like me and you like to have unstructured time? Are you like Sammie and structured time actually brings you more peace? Whatever works best for you, acknowledge that and then either set up your schedule or loosen up your schedule in whatever ways that work best for yourself.
And don't put too much on your calendar. Not everybody has a sister to yell at them when they're trying to hang out with their family or friends. So sometimes you have to be that evil stepsister for yourself.
I'm your real sister, but and not evil. Also, keep in mind, sometimes when you're doing something unconventional, like taking a work break, other people might project their fears on you. If they don't, that's amazing. That just means it's getting more common. But if it does, we're here for you. We support you. And tell as many people as you want to, or keep it to yourself a little bit. It doesn't matter. Do what's best for you.
If you can't tell anybody in your real life, then come to the Build a Wealthy Spirit Substack page and let us know what you're going to do because we'd love to hear.
buildawealthyspirit.com. And last but not least, Sammie, also have self-compassion. It's not easy to chill out, TBH. I really do think a work break is such an amazing experience. And if you're able to have one, don't expect it to go perfectly. And also do what you can to try to enjoy it. And I'll attach, I have so many great sabbatical resources. I know so many people who've done sabbaticals now. I will share those in our show notes so that you can even dive more into this topic if you're interested.
Community time.
Before we say goodbye, it's our community time.
Guys, there's a hurricane.
There's a hurricane that's actively attacking us right now.
Well, here we are talking about sabbaticals. We're talking about this town that we may or may not be leaving soon.
Seems like sooner now that the hurricane's going on.
Yeah. Here's the thing. We're in Southern California.
We are in the desert.
We are inland. Okay? We're not LA. We're not San Diego. We can't see the ocean.
There are tumbleweeds.
And yet, all of a sudden on Friday, I heard about this Hurricane Hillary. And I thought it was a metaphor. I literally thought it was a symbol for something. Because I thought, no way would there be a hurricane in Southern California. Then I did a little Googling. And I realized, holy crap. There's a hurricane coming towards us. To us. In the desert. In the middle of nowhere.
You know, on the news, they were saying that it could go towards Los Angeles, and that would be a big problem because that could cause giant waves and riptides and, you know, major floods. And they said, or it can go inland to the desert and cause flash flooding. But I could tell that they were secretly hoping that it would go more inland because that would affect less people.
I agree, Sammie. Maybe we're just insecure, but sometimes when you have these big cities, because right now it's splitting us. It's like going through Palm Springs, and it's like, will it hit LA?
Sorry, Palm Springs.
Will it hit these towns that honestly, I saw someone comment, I am going to have to Google the name of that town because I've never heard of it. You think people don't think that those people shouldn't get hit with a hurricane? They don't care.
They're like, if it's a choice between Los Angeles or a town that I have to Google, which one should get hit?
Good news is the hurricane, it's been downgraded. It's like tropical storm Hillary. It's like really heavy rain and wind Hillary, which is not bad. It's good. It's great that it's being downgraded. It doesn't look like it's going to hit us. However, we are on the outskirts, and if we get any rain, we have issues.
If you think we're being a little bit dramatic, it's almost the 1-year anniversary of when a radio tower fell onto our house. That's right, a radio tower fell onto our house. That's scary.
During what was like a 10-minute thunderstorm.
Yes.
Which was not a hurricane. And let me tell you something, Sammie. Thank God, okay? You know what? God has a plan, and I am so glad that the radio tower is gone. I think about that. I'm like, you know what? At least there's no freaking radio tower next to us.
It's already down.
It's already down. We'll link that episode too in case you're curious about what we're talking about.
You know, all this talk about hurricanes and rain, we have been showered with love this week.
Yes, shout outs to our community.
First of all, we have our mom, one who dances in the rain. As if you know her, she quotes that often.
She lives it. She has been in hurricanes and literally will dance. Doesn't love that for her children, I will say. Actually, I was talking to her on the phone today. She was a little bit worried because the power was flicking on and off while we were chatting. But I was like, you know what? It seems like it's just going to be a lot of rain for us. Get some wind. We have water. We have food. Like, we're doing the best we can. And now we just wait. And my mom was like, you know, you got to dance in the rain. And I was like, I feel like if I sent you that video, not sure how you would feel. But I do love that our parents are they just embrace whatever's going on. And I think there's an important lesson there for us.
And you know what our mom embraced? Last week's episode. She loved the episode on lazy girl jobs. She said, my 2 hardworking girls did such a good job with this episode. She did not like that she felt like we attacked Gen Z, which I really hope if you're a Gen Z out there, that was not at all our intention. In fact, we love the idea of lazy girl jobs. Our mother loves Gen Z.
Loves Gen Z. She's a youth to the people kind of person, you know?
Yes. I told her, you love Gen Z. She's like, I know, they're so adorable.
She loves children. And if you are the 1 or 2 people who are in the Gen Z demographic that listen to our podcast, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. buildawhealthyspirit.com. But actually, Sammie, you know what I loved? I heard from so many of our friends who I will not mention, who said, I love my lazy girl job. It is a power statement. We were talking about the good and bad of lazy girl jobs, but I think there is something powerful to be like, you know what? I got a good job. I get good pay. I get to go home and I don't have to worry. If that's a lazy girl job, then that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, after work, they're going to spin class. Then they're taking a nice shower, and then they're lotioning themselves to smell like a cookie. That's the kind of job I want too. I love it.
Exactly. I also got a great comment from Ryan. He also had a comment about the lazy girl job. He said, the core instance also completely resonates with me, but I think it goes too far in implicitly denying a lot of the value you can get from good work. And I love that. He also wrote a great piece on quiet quitting that he shared that I'll share here too. I loved his thoughts on it. Layla said, love this episode. She left a comment, buildawhealthyspirit.com. And Rick said, a pleasure to call out our episode with Monica. He said, keep them coming. We would love to hear from you too. buildawhealthyspirit.com. Let us know. You can subscribe, leave a comment. You can get show notes. You have any resources we have from the episode. Get a little reminder every week signing up. Check it out.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rulebook and we rethink the status quo.